The Murdaugh murders? Murdaugh
Yeah,
murders,
so
yes.
he is found guilty 2 consecutive life sentences for killing his wife and son, 22-year-old son. But you sent me a op-ed. Why Alex Murdaugh's quick conviction worries me was the title of it. And I was wondering if you could discuss it.
Yeah, so this is a case we've talked about a little bit before, and it's the subject of an HBO documentary. It's the subject of a Netflix documentary. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before it's the subject of a movie. It's a wild case, and the whole thing. I can't describe the entire multi-part documentaries, but essentially what you have is a very powerful small town family, a string of murders or suspicious deaths culminating in the death of Alex Murdaugh's wife and son, and he's accused of killing the wife and son at like their hunting lodge retreat. And he was convicted really quickly, just I believe after about 3 hours of deliberation after a weeks long trial. And what made this curious is that this was a trial that was almost entirely built around circumstantial evidence. Now, when you say circumstantial evidence, a lot of people think that means, well, something about circumstantial evidence means lesser form of evidence. That doesn't necessarily mean lesser form of evidence. It means that there was for example, no eyewitness who watched him shoot that his family members allegedly. And so what was the case built around? The case was built around a combination of a lot of evidence from cell phones. So for specifically location and step counts. So where was Murdaugh at specific times? How many steps was he taking? Did it match with his accounts? Also, there was a Snapchat video that revealed that he was there at the scene of the crime at a time when he said he wasn't at the scene of the crime. And so there was a lot of evidence that cast doubt on his alibi or on his story. But still, at the end of the day, they don't have the murder weapons. They didn't have eyewitness accounts of the murder. And the motive, Sarah, to me, never made a ton of sense.
Motive makes no sense.
Motive makes no sense to me, which the motive was, his alleged motive was to kill his family members to distract attention from his financial crimes, when the financial crimes were highlighting his financial crimes were a big part of his trial. And so the murders actually brought more attention to his financial crimes. And so essentially what you had was a situation where he was caught in a bunch of lies. His alibi kind of fell apart, but there really wasn't direct evidence that there wasn't the kind of blood spatter evidence that you might think of. There wasn't a murder weapon. There weren't the fingerprints on the murder weapon. There wasn't eyewitness testimony. It was much more, all of the tech indicates he was there when they died. And so therefore the Times op-ed, which we can put into the chat, was, wait a minute, how do you get 3 hours of deliberation out of 6 weeks of testimony with circumstantial evidence only, with a weird motive that doesn't make any sense? I thought it was a pretty thought-provoking piece, Sarah. I don't know. I'm very curious as to your thoughts.
In a different case, it would be a very thought-provoking piece.
Okay, now tell me why in a different case.
I am very sympathetic to the idea that we are just starting to use all of this basically self-surveillance that we have from carrying our devices with us at all times in criminal trials. However, that is not why the jury only took 3 hours, is because they were like, oh yeah, but their phones weren't unlocked after 9 p.m., so we're pretty sure they were killed in this 10-minute window, and we know he was there. He was convicted in 3 hours because at every step of the way, he kept lying and then admitting he was lying, and then he took the stand, and it was a disaster. And look, he had to take the stand, in my opinion. Not had to. I understand why he took the stand. It was a Hail Mary move. It was unlikely to work, and it didn't work. But nevertheless, they convicted him for that. It was all the other stuff. I actually think that in this case, the jury didn't so much care about the steps and the unlocking phone. I think it was far more about him saying he wasn't there, number one, and number two, his son having a Snapchat video with him in it that he clearly didn't know about, or else he wouldn't have had that alibi in the first place. And that was enough. And while his motive makes no sense, neither, of course it doesn't, because everything about this guy makes no sense, and all these other suspicious murders, all of these other suspicious deaths, were greed, and you have this family that's kind of running this town. And so, yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't make sense, but one can imagine that you think, okay, I'm a rat who's been cornered. My financial crimes are about to come to life, and my life as I know it is going to crumble. If my wife and son were about to die, then people would feel really sorry for me, and it could buy me time to fix some of this. And by the way, I'm super high on opioids.
Right. I am super baked right now.
So, sure, he didn't think through the fact that it would create more scrutiny on his finances. That's not proof of innocence to me. That's proof of stupid.
Yeah. And the other, the other idea, which was that there were some vigilantes who had killed his son and wife, because his son was involved in a fatal boat crash where a young girl died. I mean, this story is just beyond imagination. And the idea that there might be vigilantes that would go after his son was also a little too close to a previous argument. He had previously had a self-inflicted, or he had he hired somebody to kill him, and the person didn't succeed, and it's just a mess. Like, it's just an unbelievable mess.
Except he didn't hire the person to kill him. He hired the person to pretend to kill him.
Hired the person. Was he hired to pretend to kill him? Or was he hired to kill him and he missed? And then he blamed it on a robbery gone awry. It's a mess. It's a mess. So, yeah, I think that you're exactly right, that it was his lies are what did him in more than anything else. And in a way, it doesn't surprise me, the sort of idea that he took the stand, and A, it doesn't surprise me he took the stand, and B, it doesn't surprise me it was a disaster. A, it doesn't surprise me that he took the stand, not just because of a Hail Mary, but a lot of lawyers tend to have a pretty high estimation of their ability to persuade people.
Yeah, which is weird, honestly.
So,
but look, the op-ed's point on the sort of, again, the phone steps and all of that not being as reliable as we think it is, and the jury should have spent more time on that in a different case where you didn't have all of this other stuff. I absolutely agree with that. And I also think that defense counsel would have been able to poke more holes in it in a different case where you didn't have to poke holes in everything. I mean, it was just a wall of lies and deception and financial crimes and a history of weird stuff. And then he's admitting to lying. I mean, the step count was just not really, I think, part of the deliberations.
Right. I think it was a Snapchat story. The step counts were maybe not even icing on the cake, but like some of the chocolate sprinkles on top of the icing on the cake. Yeah, no, I'm with you. But it is really interesting. The amount of interest in this case has been off the charts.
Yeah, because when you kill your own son, we've got questions. Who does that? What drives someone to do that? And the motive, as you said, isn't satisfying to anyone. You weren't trying. Right. You didn't think killing your son would let you get away with your crimes. You thought it would buy you time, and you thought that was worth your own son's life. Wow.
It's stunning. It's just absolutely stunning.